Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is another weekly update and I have 5 books to talk to you about today that I have finished in the past week. We'll go ahead and get started and, work our way up from the lowest to the highest rated. So the first book I'll talk about is a 3-star book and that's And Then She Vanished by Nick Jones. So I received this for review from NetGalley. This is a sci-fi / time travel book where our main character Joseph discovers that he has the ability to time travel. So he essentially wants to go back in time about 20-ish years to the night that his sister vanished. And he wants to do this obviously in order to save her. So, I did enjoy this book. I think it has a much sadder tone overall. I get a lot of this tone, I think, because Amy, this sister, vanished and was never seen again. So we get to see throughout the course of the book how this one moment has really affected Joseph's life, as well as the lives of his parents. I did enjoy the time travel aspects in this book. I thought they were pretty well done and explained to the extent that I wanted them to, I think. We do have some rules here with this inverse relationship between how far back in time you go and how long you're able to spend there. So for instance, going back 20 years, you're only able to spend a few seconds there. So Joseph learns, these rules and how to deal with them in order to actually be able to save his sister. I do think that there were some repetitive parts, particularly in the middle, where Joseph is, first learning about his time traveling abilities, and he does some test runs essentially to see how these, how his abilities really work, and also just how far in time he can actually go back, and of course how long he can spend there. We also have flashbacks throughout, not only to the night of Amy's disappearance, but also just from that point in time, kind of up until the present day. So we do really get to see what happened and how this has affected everyone, and I did like these. I also really enjoyed Joseph throughout the course of the book uncovering what has happened to Amy. He starts to find more clues to her disappearance, and I enjoyed this underlying mystery. I will say the ending was also not really what I expected, and I did enjoy that, and I think there are aspects that are setting us up for future installments in this series. In terms of the character work, we're obviously very focused on Joseph, and I don't know, I think I did kind of struggle to connect with him as well as the other characters a bit. I think, at the beginning he's pretty sad, he is struggling to sleep, he's having trouble taking care of his house, paying bills and things like that, so he's not in a good place at all, and it is nice to see him, as he learns of his time-traveling abilities, he starts getting hope again that he can actually, go back and change things for the better, and I liked seeing that a lot. I can appreciate where he's coming from and everything, but, I just feel there was a little bit of disconnect between me and Joseph. I loved how driven he is to go back and save his sister. I thought that this sibling relationship was done really well. Joseph actually has this ability of psychometry, which is kind of, you can tell the history of objects by touching them, and I really liked how this was done and how it kind of played a role in certain events and just abilities and everything, but I kind of wanted more of that. I mentioned, this kind of more melancholy tone. There are content warnings for things like suicide, so do be aware of that. But overall, I think I did enjoy this take on time travel and would recommend it if you're interested in this premise. This also just came out February 2nd, and I'm pretty sure at least 2 of the books perhaps were released under different names. I think what they're trying to do is actually re-release these from this publisher this year. So I think, you may be able to binge it if you are interested in it. So now we get into the 3.5-star books, and the first one I'll talk about here is The Future Is Yours by Dan Frey. So I also received this for review from NetGalley, and it is a sci-fi thriller where our characters essentially invent a computer that connects to the internet a year in the future. But it turns out that the future is maybe not quite what they expected, and it's not quite as bright as they imagined it to be. So I really loved the use of mixed media here. We have things like emails, texts, transcripts, blog posts, I think. I've talked about this before, I really enjoy the use of mixed media in books, so I thought it worked pretty well here, and it's a really fun way to tell this story. It also makes the book just feel so fast-paced, it is extremely quick to read, and I really liked that part. In general, I think this concept was really interesting, and we did get some detail about things like quantum computing, and I didn't feel particularly overwhelmed by these more sciencey bits, so I enjoyed them. It certainly takes a darker turn than I mean, like, you can kind of tell based on the synopsis, like, you know, the future is not as bright as you imagine, but it definitely took a darker turn than I was really anticipating. And I think there are a lot of questions about, like, free will and just, like, if everything is, like, already set in stone. So I thought that was interesting to explore. The ending ends on a very ambiguous note, and I know I was looking at some other Goodreads reviews, and I know some people didn't like this. I actually think it worked really well for the story, and I think it kind of suits the overall tone for the book. So I think the main drawback for me was actually the characters. So I didn't really like any of them, honestly. We have a lot of stereotypical, kind of terrible Silicon Valley people. They just kind of irritated me. We have one of our main characters who's just absolutely obsessed with fame and making a lot of money. He's incredibly selfish, and I really disliked him. Our other main character is kind of this reclusive genius who can't talk to girls. So I don't know. I feel like I didn't necessarily love these stereotypes, and I think the story ended up ultimately becoming more focused on them and just the arguments that they have and just a lot of the drama between all of these main characters, more than the more the sci-fi aspects of it, which I kind of miss. I would have preferred more of an exploration of, you know, this computer, right? It's such a cool idea to be able to connect to the internet a year in the future, and we have, it's a different type of time traveling, I think. It also just kind of makes me wonder, I feel like so many of the things that happen could have just been so easily avoided, and I can't help but be all of these things are problems of your own making. But, perhaps that's the point of the book. Overall, I did enjoy my time with it. Again, it's a very quick read. I loved the use of mixed media in particular, and I think it's a fun take on time travel. So yeah, if you're interested in it, I would certainly recommend it. It just came out February 9th, so you can definitely get a copy. The next 3.5-star book I'll talk about is Girls with Razor Hearts by Suzanne Young. So this is the second book in this series, which started with Girls with Sharp Sticks. This is a YA sci-fi dystopia book where our main character, Mina, as well as the other girls that she's friends with, escape from their boarding school, and they're wanting to shut down this corporation. They end up enrolling in a prep school that has ties to this academy, which is this boarding school, and they're trying to just take down this corporation from the inside, essentially. So I'm going to leave it at that because, I highly recommend, do not spoil yourself for this series at all. So I thought that this was an enjoyable continuation of the story. I don't think it was quite as, shocking or intense as the first book, which is a little bit unfortunate because I thought, you know, I absolutely loved the first book, and I think it was because of this tone, and, I felt this was a little lackluster. I obviously still very much enjoyed it, but I just don't think it was as strong as the first one. It is very fast-paced and easy to read. I was interested in it the entire time. It's also just oh man, it's a little frustrating to read at times because you have this dystopian setting where women are kind of treated more as objects, and, you know, it's just so infuriating to read, but at the same time I can recognize that it's well done because it does make me feel these strong feelings. And I also like seeing how Mina and the other girls stand up for each other and for other women, so I think that was particularly well done. I do think the plot in here seems to be a bit of a detour from the main plot from the first book, but we do get to see the outside world, and I think it'll hopefully eventually all connect where, you know, it's just trying to change society as a whole. But I think there is a bit of this all or none mentality when it comes to a lot of the topics that are addressed here, which are things you know, sexism, bullying, sexual harassment, a lot of more intense topics, in particular with the more sexist things. It kind of becomes a all men are bad sort of thing. So yeah, it was just a little bit too much at times, I think. However, I do continue to like the characters, in particular Mina, our main character. I thought, you know, she's very well done. I love how she wants to stand up for what's right and actually protect her friends. You know, with the first book, there were some really great female friendships and just these really strong bonds. And we do get that here, but I think some of the other girls kind of faded to the background a bit. And again, we do get to see them interact, but it's not quite as much as I wanted. And kind of on that note, I think Mina does more things independently, which kind of makes sense because I think the girls are starting to really come into their own with their personalities. So, I mean, it makes sense, but it's also kind of I also would have loved to just see more interactions between everyone. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I did enjoy this, and I am still interested in reading the third book, which comes out in March, I think. So, in general, I think this is a really fun series and would recommend it if you're interested. So now we're going to go ahead and jump to the 5-star books. And the first one I'll talk about here is The Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty. So I did this as a buddy read with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads and Carrie from Carrie Louise Reads. So this is the third and final book of the David Bond trilogy, and like I had been postponing reading it for months now, and like I really don't know why. It was so good, and I think like I could not have imagined a more perfect conclusion to the series. You know, I just am so satisfied with how everything wrapped up. Like I don't think throughout the book and like with these like, you know, voice messages I was sending everybody, I was like, I don't know, my theories kind of were all over the place. I was like, oh, okay, well, like maybe this is going to happen with some of our characters, and then like some of that did not happen, and I'm actually okay with this because like, yeah, I just think that the directions it went with our characters is like, yes, this is absolutely amazing. I love it so much. Stephanie had pointed this out in one of the voice messages. Like she had said like how she had forgotten just how quick these books read, and like that is absolutely true. I'd also forgotten that. Like the pacing is so great. It's really quick to read, and it's just like so easy to be like, oh well, I just need to know what happens next, and then like 200 pages later you're like, oh okay, well all right then. There's a lot of really intense moments, and things definitely start escalating as the book progresses. Like the roller coaster of emotions you experience is just such a fun time. I mean, there's like funny moments where I actually laughed out loud. There's heartbreaking moments. There's shocking moments. Like really, it's just so many emotions that I feel about this book. It was so good. What I particularly enjoyed, we get more of like the supernatural beings here, like the Ifrit, Mareed, and the Perrys, and like we've seen them a little bit before, but I think they were more involved here than previous books. But like again, this could be just me not remembering the other books as well, but it was super fun. At one point there's like a brief Kraken appearance, and I was just like, yes, I love this so much. It was wonderful. I think all of these beings have a really interesting variety of powers, and they all kind of have their own agenda, so it's like super interesting to see how like all these different factions are coming together, and like some are allies but some are enemies, and it's just, oh my god, it's so good. The journey that our characters have gone on over the series is just absolutely wonderful. I kept questioning like, is this the moment that's going to push Dara to change his ways? Like, we get to see Nari and Ollie work together to try to save Daevabad, but they also of course have their own like individual struggles and things to deal with as well. So like while they are together for a good chunk of the book, like they end up also doing things separately. I really liked seeing Nari kind of open up more, and you know, she I think kind of comes to the realization like she doesn't need to be ashamed of her past or who she is, and she like really truly embraces who she is, and I just love seeing that so much. I think Ollie has really matured over the books and kind of it's a little bit more thoughtful, though. Like he has the worst timing still with with certain things, but it's also but that's more like entertaining, I think. So yeah, I mean, like I just had such a wonderful time with this book and like this series in general. I'm very sad to see that it's over, but I just like, I don't know, it was just such an impactful journey, I think, and like I would highly recommend this series. Okay, so the last book I'll talk about is also another 5-star book, and that's When Jackals Storm the Walls by Bradley P. Beaulieu. So this is the 5th book in the Song of the Shattered Sand series, and it's the second to last book, so I'm like, oh my god, I can't wait for the last one. This is an adult, like, desert fantasy series, and essentially the reign of the kings in Sharakai has been broken, and we've got this variety of powers in the desert, both human and gods, kind of fighting for control of the city. So we'll leave it at that because it is the 5th book and I don't want to spoil things. But wow, this was just so good. I mean, like, I've really loved this series and this was no exception. It's been so much fun to see how this, like, overall story has really changed over the course of the books. Like, the beginning is definitely, or like the earlier books are definitely more of like a revenge quest, and this is kind of like pivoted a little bit, and like we get to see, I think, the grand plan here starting to be revealed, and I'm just like, I absolutely need to know what's happening next. Oh my god. Pacing is fantastic. I think we have a lot of really great action scenes as well as downtime where, you know, our characters are searching for information. It's very easy to keep reading and it's just super bingeable, I think, even though it, like, it's a large chunky book. Like, I flew through it. We do have a lot of characters and points of view here, but I think I generally enjoy reading all of them. Like, I do miss Shada being the focus like she was in earlier books, but I have very much enjoyed seeing all of these new characters over the course of the series. We are pretty familiar with most of the points of view characters here, and it's nice to see them develop more. We do get, I think, one new point of view, and this character seems pretty interesting, so like I'm curious to see if that person is involved more in the last book. And I think just generally, like, it's nice having this variety of perspectives. You can really see all different angles of this. And what's cool is, like, even the more villainous people who I definitely, like, hated at the beginning, now I'm like, okay, maybe they're actually not as bad as I thought. So I think that's, you know, says something to the character work here when you can, like, really change my mind about how much I hated these people. We also get some background information on one of the more villainous characters who's this blood mage. Like I kind of mentioned, like, can kind of understand where this person's coming from and like why they are the way they are. We also have some really interesting magic in here in this world. Like there's definitely a lot of blood magic, which is intriguing, but we also have, you know, like the different kings have different magical powers, and then we also have the gods, like I kind of, you know, mentioned. And I mean, we also have like these various creatures, like the Erika, I think. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but like who knows. But they're kind of like these sort of demon creatures, and wow, I mean, just like how everything is involved. These creatures and like the gods are definitely ominous foes to fight against. So yeah, I mean, like I really have no idea what's going to happen next, but like I absolutely can't wait to find out. I think this is an underrated series that I don't hear that many people talk about, so like I highly recommend you check it out. So those are the 5 books that I've finished since last week that I had to talk to you about, and we'll kind of hop into what I'm currently reading. And right now I am doing a buddy read of The Invasion of the Tearling by Erika Johansen with Kat from Brisbane Reviews, and we are just over halfway through, so this is the second book in the Tearling series. And like obviously we're dealing with this invasion, but we also have this like new perspective, I guess, introduced. There's like this mysterious connection between Kelsey, our now queen, and this woman from like the pre-crossing times. It's been really interesting. Like I feel like I prefer those sections more for some reason. I don't really know, but I'm now like very curious to see, like, again, we're getting tidbits about like what has happened to this world. It's just like an interesting blend of things. Like we've got kind of this dystopian setting, but also like more like high fantasy feeling stuff. So like I'm very curious to see just like what has happened in this world. We've been forming a lot of theories with this so far, which has been highly entertaining, and we'll be finishing this weekend. And then I've also started reading Lipstick Voodoo by Kristi Charish. So this is the second book in the Kincaid Strange series. I think that's what it's called. It's an urban fantasy series about a voodoo practitioner in Seattle who can raise zombies. We've got like this cold case going on, and this like ghost that's kind of taken over this zombie body, so which is not good. Like that's definitely going to cause problems. I think people from this ghost zombies past start dying, and whatever's killing them is not human. It's good so far. I think I gave the first one like 3 stars, so like it was an interesting world, but like I feel like I was confused about how the magic worked, and I think there were maybe some pacing issues. So I mean, I think this one's going a little bit better, and I'm generally enjoying it, so I'll probably try to finish this fairly soon. So what was funny was yesterday when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to read, I actually had Zombie, that song by the Cranberries, stuck in my head, and I guess like, I don't know, like somehow I didn't even realize that I had like picked this up and was like, oh wait a minute, this is actually has to do with zombies, so like perhaps my subconscious was working in mysterious ways, but I thought that was highly entertaining. This weekend, Kasha from Kasha's Book Cemetery is doing a like weekend evil-a-thon, so I need to figure out what I want to read for that. Like, I think I'm going to join her for some live streams at some point this weekend. I think there are some books that I want to read that are perhaps more like dark fantasy than horror, but I do want to get to those, and I think some of these can continue this like finish it February sort of theme, so we'll find out what I end up reading. I guess that'll wrap us up here for today. So let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. And if you've made it this far, go ahead and leave some sort of desert emoji. I don't know if they even have these things. Like, I don't know if there are pyramids. But if there are, then go ahead and leave that, or just, you know, let me know that you've made it this far. I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.